Hey guys, welcome to another Warframe video, and in this video we will be looking at Archon Equinox. If I do see an Equinox player, they mostly be using Maim instead of Mend, which is pretty much reasonable since Maim is pretty much easy to use in terms of gameplay style. But when it comes to obtaining Equinox, it does take a while to get, but in this video I'm going to show you how great Equinox is. Now I have 3 builds for Equinox, which is Mend, Maim, and then Mend and Maim, which is basically a build that's using both Mend and Maim. So the first 2 Archon Shards are the ability strength. Now when it comes to this shard, you definitely do need to have at least some or certain amounts of ability strength, because you definitely need to have range and duration in your build for Equinox in order for Equinox to even be really good. So here I have 5 Archon Shards. 4 of them will be using the Crimson Archon Shard for 20% ability strength and 20% duration. When it comes to the duration shards, you definitely don't need to have these because Equinox does not really need duration, believe it or not. Not that much. I would say if you have around 30% duration, then you definitely need to add some ability duration into your Equinox, but otherwise around 88% should be fine for Equinox. And you can definitely replace these 2 ability duration shards for ability strength shards if you guys want, but I do have an ability that requires duration, so I do have 2 ability duration shards here. When it comes to the Azure Archon Shard, you definitely need to have this. 100% need to have at least 150 armor added. That way you get a 300 armor, and that means that you also get a 50% damage reduction. Now unless you have subsumed a ability that allows you to do some CC or crowd control, I'm not talking about Rest and Ridge because that's just too spammy. I'm talking about something like Gloom or something like that. If you have some CC, definitely will help you survive, but otherwise if you do not have CC, which of course in my main build I do not have any CC, well, I do have armor here for the extra survivability. Now really quick, I'm just going to show you my personal weapon loadout. When it comes to the weapons for Equinox, you can use whatever weapon you want. AoE weapons like a Brahma or something like that, or a Tonkor, go for it. If you want to use like a machine gun or a pistol or any other weapons, you know what, go for it. The weapon I'm currently using will be the Stradivar, and this is a crit build for Semi, but it does work on automatic, and I will show you really soon on how amazing this build is when it comes to Equinox. I am also using a Death Cube, which I highly recommend for energy generation. Otherwise, it's definitely up to you when it comes to the companions. Now also, my Death Cube can also give energy generation, but also it can proc the growing power as well for me. I'm also using a parazon, and usually I use parazon when I need to kill a Xmas. So I have Swift Mercy here with power drain and blood for energy. You definitely don't need to have these type of mods here. You can definitely get a blood for ammo mod in here if you're going to be using a lot of ammo. And finally, the focus trait I am using would be Moderate for the damage. So the first build I have here would be Mend, and this build is straight up forward. You definitely only be using Mend, no Maim, you'll be using the Pacify, and you will be using Gloom. So I have Combat Discipline here, and the reason why I have this is because of Arcane Avenger. Arcane Avenger procs on Combat Discipline, so it does work really well, giving you the extra damage. And also it helps with crits. So if you have an AoE weapon that has around 96% a crit chance at least, or around 80 or 90, you will get orange crits somewhat here and there. So this Arcane Avenger works pretty damn well. And don't forget that I also have Gloom here. So every time you hit an enemy, you get some HP back. And with Mend being turned on, every time you kill an enemy, you get shields back. So in theory, you're pretty much God mode as long as you keep killing. So AoE weapons does make this build a lot better. But for the purpose of this video, I'll be showing some demo of the Stradivar and killing enemies with that as well. So I have Power Drift here with 15% ability strength. You can definitely replace this with Cunning Drift, but around 100% range stock is good enough for you to be able to maintain Gloom's duration, as well as the Pacify, as well as Mend. Should be a good sweet spot. You can increase range if you want, but it's not required. I have Adaptation here for extra damage resistance, Transit Fortitude for ability strength, Prime Continuity for the Gloom. Now, usually, like I said before, you don't really need duration unless you have an ability that will be using duration. Streamline for the efficiency on both the Pacify and Mend. That is right, guys. So when it comes to both these 2 abilities, they both do rely mostly on efficiency than duration when it comes to energy drain. So adding a whole bunch of ability efficiency will help you a lot when it comes to energy management. Energy conversion here for the extra ability strength. Peaceful provocation, I usually use this for the slow, because combining peaceful with gloom, you're pretty much going to almost, and I said almost, stun lock enemies. And of course, Umbra Intensify for ability strength. I do have an Arcane Acceleration here, and this is an optional arcane. Depending on what weapon you're using, you definitely want to replace this with other arcanes. For me, I'm using a assault rifle. So every time I shoot, I will land a critical chance And of course, when I get a critical hit, I pretty much have a super fast fire rate. So this build is pretty straightforward. You want to cast your Gloom, your Pacifier if you want, or your Men if you want. Usually I just cast Gloom and I'm okay, but when things get intense for my teammates, I activate Pacify for my teammates so that way they get some extra CC on their end, as well as Men for regeneration of shields. So this build is pretty much a run and gun. So this build is pretty much one of those common builds where players would actually be using Maim instead of Mend because of the nuke potential. And when it comes to nuking enemies, it is pretty much possible in terms of fissure defense. I've been in missions where I pretty much nuke everything pretty quickly. And if you do get fissured or corrupted in a fissure mission, you're pretty much going to one-shot almost everything. So it's pretty strong. With the current stats I have here, efficiency does not really matter that much because you do have a Nourish here to help you with energy generation. And when it comes to Pacify and Provoke, I do have Peaceful Provocation for the extra ability strength. Peaceful Provocation might be a placeholder mod here for the 30% extra ability strength. But if you don't want to use this, you can also use Augur Secrets if you guys want, but you only get 24% ability strength. So you definitely have Growing Power here for proccing, Power Dread for ability strength, Overextended for the ability range as well. That's really good. You definitely want to get as much range as you can. You got Energy Conversion here for 50% ability strength, Transient Fortitude for more ability strength. Now Prime Continuity just for that Nourish. Blind Rage for extra ability strength, Prime Flow for the extra energy. You definitely want to have this. And of course, to Intensify. The arcanes I have here are pretty much self-explanatory here. So the idea is that you definitely want to get 2 million damage at most to kill or one-shot Grineers, and around 1 million damage for Corpus. And the reason why it's only 1 million damage for Corpus is because they don't have damage reduction. However, when it comes to Grineers, even though you do slash damage, you still get some damage reduction on the slash procs or the damage that the Maim does. So 2 million is a safe bet. Activating Nourish with the Maim active pretty much will give you a boost of damage. And finally, the last build is pretty much self-explanatory. It's pretty much a combination of Mend and Maim. So basically we'll be using Mend and Maim with a Pacify and Provoke. You'll be using all 4 of these abilities, and I do have Nourish here subsumed for the extra energy, Combat Discipline and Arcane Avenger bundled up together for the Mend, Power Jet for extra ability strength, Overextended for more range. Archon Intensify is a optional mod here because it is pretty tough to actually execute Archon Intensify to proc off the extra 30% ability strength. So when it comes to this, what you can do is just kill a few enemies with Combat Discipline, activate your Metamorphosis for the HP, Prime Continuity for the extra ability duration for Nourish, Transient Fortitude for the ability strength, and of course Blind Rage as well. You definitely want to have Energy Transfer for this type of build. If you do not have this build does not work at all. Prime Flow for Energy Max, and of course Umbra Vitality for health. And of course Molt Augmented for the extra ability strength. And that is it for this video. In terms of the best build, if you're deciding which one is better, I highly do recommend the Maim Build because that is pretty much the easiest build to play as. And it's pretty strong. Wanting doing some nuking, then Maim Build is pretty much your go-to for nuking and fissures. And Man and Maim is pretty much a flexible build. And it actually works really well with fissures because you can actually control the nuking in the fissures. And I'm not talking about Steel Path, by the way, I'm talking about the normal fissures. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, peace out.